Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming here to the great Boorhaman Hall, and it's great to be here with you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to point out that this public meeting is being recorded to improve access to the meeting for our community. The recording will be published and will be retained by Council in accordance with its legal obligation, and as a visitor, you may be recorded. Just one moment, I've got to turn the recording on there. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to point out that we don't have our microphone system in here today, so if a time comes up at general business or at any item here today, if you have a question, we will ask you to stand up, state your name and talk loudly and clearly. That refers to all of us councillors and exec staff as well. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge our traditional owners, pay my respects to the land in which we are meeting here at Boorhaman, and pay all our respects to our elders past, present and emerging, and elders from other communities who may be here, and also pay my respects to everybody in the rural city where you're at that makes this community the great place that it is. Almighty God, we humbly ask Thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations so that we may truly preserve the welfare of the people on whom we serve. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll just go round the room to introduce our fellow staff. We've had a couple of changes in executive staff due to people being away on vacation. So I might start across here with Ben. We'll go round the room and tell us your role here tonight, Ben.
Sure, my name's Ben Thomas. I'm the Acting Director of Community Infrastructure.
I'm Stephen Swart. I'm the Director of Sustainability and Culture.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jack Carey from the Council.
Councillor Dave Fuller.
Brendan McGrath, CEO. Hi.
And obviously Dean Reeves, Mayor.
Councillor Harvey Nick. Councillor Harry Bossell, Councillor for the South Ward.
Councillor Ashley Fitzpatrick.
Councillor Irene Grant for the Warby Board.
I'm Tom Corley. I'm the Acting Director of Corporate Leisure.
Thank you. We'll quickly go down to item number 7, which is the confirmation of the previous minutes of the council meeting. And I look to Councillor Harvey Benton. Are you happy to move those minutes, Harvey, with no changes? Irene, to second that. Thank you. If there's no questions from the gallery, I'll look to councillors. All those in favour of the recommendation of the previous minutes? Those in favour, and the motion is carried. The recommendation is carried. I want to go to item number 8, and there's going to be a few people talk on this item. We have a conflict of interest disclosure benefit here from a couple of items, or a number of items here on our council agenda. And I might start firstly with Brendan McGrath. And in these items, we will ask the people to step out of the room and shut the doors so they can't hear the proceeding and how the vote goes. So Brendan first.
Thanks, Mayor. Declaring a conflict of interest in item 15.2, the low density rural residential strategy as I own land in the study area, and the confidential item 22 as it deals with my annual review.
Thank you. Harvey Benton, Councillor Benton.
A conflict of interest in 14.1 as I am on the Deputy Information Reserve.
Thank you. Councillor Grant.
Item 15.2 for a material conflict as I own land in the area being considered for subdivision.
Councillor Fitzpatrick.
I have a conflict of interest in 15.2 as a family member owns land from the study area.
Thank you. There's no other conflicts of interest there. We'll continue on. We'll also get you to nominate those conflicts again once we come to that item. We have no receptions of petitions or no hearing of deputations or council reports. And firstly, we're going to move into community infrastructure. I'm going to look to Acting Director Ben Thomas at 14.1. Oh, sorry, you, 14.1. Councillor Benton, you need to step out. Sorry. We've got a conflict with the Recreation Reserve, and we'll ask Councillor Benton to leave. Being a member of the committee. We might... Councillor Benson, could you shut those doors?
It's actually locked in the kitchen office.
Oh, are they? Yeah. Keep them in there too.
Thank you. Acting Director.
Thank you. So every year at Council, our community recreation
community, social, cultural, environmental experience for our local residents. And community organisations can apply for grants between $1,000 and $10,000. And this year we have $160,000 available for grants. So over the last 6 months or so, our grants team ran a drop-in sessions, groups come in and talk about their projects. And we dropped around our rural communities as well to give everyone a chance. And with those applications, we went through a first stage where we checked out the grants against our eligibility criteria. And then we assessed the applications sent to the team within council. And from those recommendations, we have a group of community groups that are nominated today for approval. So the recommendation we have is that the council approves the recommended applicants for the 24-25 community grants, and then disclose the successful applications for the program.
Thank you, Ben Thomas. Are there any questions from the gallery on this item? No. Can I look for a mover, Councillor Bussell, and a seconder, please, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Bussell, did you want to talk on the recommendation first?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a great program for the Rural City of Wangaratta. It's so helpful for some of the sporting organisations and groups. It's really, really helpful. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Fuller, nothing to say. Any councillor like to talk on the recommendation? Ben Thomas, just a couple of quick questions to you. Hopefully you can answer them off your head. With the amount of, can you tell us, there's about 29 organisations that will be funded here, either partly or wholly. How many organisations did apply for these grants?
We had approximately 40 to 50 applications, so about 20.
Yep, which would be in excess of around $300,000 if we had $300,000 to give out.
Every year we always get more than we can board out, so it's quite a tough task for us to deliberate on the applications and rank them in terms of their benefit to the community.
Lovely, thank you. Well, there's no further questions. Councillor Bussell, as the mover, you've got nothing further?
I just want to thank the staff for the tireless work that went into going through and double checking and checking the eligibility of these. So I just want to make it clear. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. I will look to Councillor Bussell, Councillor Fuller and Councillor Grant to read the people who are receiving some funding. Thank you, Councillor Bussell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wangaratta Baptist Church Family Outreach Fund Days, $5,000. Moyun District Preschool for outdoor play space upgrade, $10,000. Wangaratta Players Incorporated technology upgrade, $5,272.50. North Wangaratta Community Group shelter picnic tables at Reedy Creek, $7,655. Gateway Health Active Rural Communities, $8,000. Hamilton Park Cooperative Limited to develop a park playground development, $5,488. Northeast Canoe Club, beginners in whitewater kayaking, $3,000. Moyu Tennis Club, barbecue upgrade, $10,000. Northeast Health Careers Forum Organising Committee, Health Careers Forum for $700. Blind Sport and Recreation Victoria, making meals, rhythm and beats with people with vision loss, $4,114. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bussell. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. North East Multicultural Association for the 2025 Harmony Day, $4,500. Boys to the Bush Limited, Good Yarns Great Community, $2,210. The Mungie Hall Committee, Country Hear My Heartbeat, $2,945. Open Door Neighbourhood House, being safe within our community, $7,000. Wangaratta Hockey Club, the Dragon Diner, $10,000. Wangaratta Bowls and Sports Club Incorporated, Honour Board Replacement, $4,000. Bobonawara Soldier Memorial Hall, Centenary Celebrations, $6,727.10. Glenrowan Primary School, Outdoor Kitchen Sink, $3,355. The Greta Sporting Complex, Community Barbecue Area and Paved Pathways, $10,000.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grant, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rotary Club of Middle Oxley, $7,092. Wangaratta Pickleball Club, $5,300. Men's Shed, $2,507. Well, I actually should say that the Rotary Club was for their family fun day and market. The Pickleball Club was for the provision of freestanding posts. The membership was for a computer upgrade, and I've said $2,507. Wangaratta Snow Sports Youth Development Incorporated, and that's for $1,945. The Boorhaman Golf Club, warm-up area and driving range bays, $10,000. The Spring River Community and Recreation Hall Reserve, which is the replacement of air conditioning receiver board, $4,485. Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, and they're going to be doing an engagement session with children in Wangaratta, and $5,106 to them. Wangaratta Baseball Softball Club, Indigenous Spirit Junior Baseball Jersey Project, and $4,000 has been allocated to that. The Eldorado Museum Association, and it's the Woolshed Valley Canals Upgrade, $6,820, and the Wangaratta Rifle Club with the Henry Johnson Storyboard, and that's $2,334.21.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. That's the accepting. Ben Thomas, Acting Director, you'll obviously notify the successful applicants. You'll also get in touch with the unsuccessful applicants to let them know how they went wrong in their application, if they did or just didn't fit the criteria, etc., by mail and obviously by voice.
Yep, that's great. We can feedback. So next time they're ready to go.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 14.2, inclusive Wangaratta. Thank you. Oh, we'll wait for Homie. You probably have a beer out there, wouldn't you? Thank you, Acting Director. 14.2, inclusive Wangaratta, please, your recommendation. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. So, inclusive Wangaratta assists Council in meeting its legislative responsibilities in access and inclusion, and it also assists us in achieving our community vision of being inclusive, courageous, compassionate and supportive community. We've been working on this for about 6 months or so. Over that time, we put our draft plan out for public comment by Connect Wangaratta, and received about 50 or 60 responses during that time. And since then, the council officers have been reviewing all the responses and going through and considering that in the revised plan. The plan itself, it covers issues such as access, toilets, flags, and it looks to cover all parts of our community. So issues such as access for toilets and getting around on the footpath is something that impact people with disability, that impact the elderly. So this plan looks to cover all those issues for our whole community. During the Inclusive Wangaratta, during the feedback from Connect Wangaratta, we had a diverse range of views on the plan. There was querying around the terminology that was used. There was querying about inclusive toilets, and we seek to update the plan to incorporate some better language that was easy to understand, as well as some examples of toilets in our LGA. The toilets that Glenbrough and stop on the Hume Highway there are quite good examples of inclusive toilets. We've also sought to just broaden some of the language in the plan such that it was covering everyone. We want this plan to be for the whole community and to pick up the issues that some people face. There's some parts of the plan which will be considered later. So there's a topic there about the flying of community flags. So currently we have legislative requirements with how Council flies the Australian Indigenous Torres Strait Island flags, where we are required to fly them in the correct sequence, correct height, which sets our requirements there. But there's actually nothing at the moment that sets out how Council flies community flags for days of celebration. So part of the strategy is to suggest to Council that at a later stage they develop a flag policy that focuses on how we as Council work with flags, flags down the street and days of significance. So yeah, that's essentially a recommendation of the strategy that Council develop that at a later stage. In terms of the strategy, it really fits within Council's role as a community leader. We deliver services, we're a community connector, and this is why we see the strategy as being important in fitting in with our community vision. And today we recommending that Council considers the submissions during community engagement, endorses the revised plan for public exhibition with a period of 28 days. If no significant changes are needed prior after that, then it will be brought back to a future Council meeting for adoption. And we feel, Council officers feel that another period of public exhibition is needed because we've made reasonably significant changes to the plan that recently went out on exhibition.
Thank you, Ben. Ben, I'd like to raise an alternate motion for item 14.2 for the Wangaratta Inclusive Plan. So I'm going to have four recommendations here. And the first recommendation is consider submissions and thanks to submitters for their input during the development and the exhibition stages. Resolve, number two, so that was number one. Number two is to resolve to cease all further work on the development of this plan until the newly elected council has an opportunity to consider how it wishes to proceed. Acknowledge the work by officers and the working groups that developed this plan to this point, and acknowledge the importance of the plan for inclusiveness for all members of our community. So I'd like to raise that as an alternate motion. I'm the mover of that. Can I have a seconder, please, to second that? Harvey? Sorry, Harvey, I've got you down then as a seconder. So I'll talk to the recommendation, and then I'll ask anybody else who wants to talk to the recommendation. So this plan has been going on for a period, has been sort of stated for about 6 months, and it's been... Oh, sorry. I do, yes, sorry. They're my recommendations. Are there any questions from the gallery?
I've got a couple of questions.
Sorry, Cassandra, could you just say your name? Even though I know who you are, I just need it for a recording process.
My name is Cassandra Pollard, and I have a couple of questions. But before that, I'd like to refute that this has been the work of 6 months. I had emails that prove work started on this document in 2022 within Council, and I think it's incredibly misleading when the working group met 4 times over a period of slightly more than a year to discuss the evolution of this document and put input. So right there and then, you've wiped out a good 6 months' work of people that have contributed already to this document. So, now my questions. How can the council be justified in placing the inclusion plan out for yet another round of public consultation, if that's what transpires in the future, when the council officers have stated in the agenda that appropriate consultation has occurred? And this statement, in my perspective, having been involved for over a year, is more than true, because there have been numerous stages of public consultation that have fed into this draft. Not 6 months. A further round of public consultation, handballed to the next period of council's evolution, will not resolve the issue of there being differences of opinion. The appropriate response to diametrically oppose submissions is for our elected representatives, our councillors, to take one of three options: adopt it, or amend it and then adopt it, or reject it entirely. So yeah, that was my question. How can it be justified to push it forward into the next council term, considering all that I've said about the lengthy, weighty, arduous public consultation that's already happened? My second question, in the spirit of transparency, and this is important because people may want to consider being involved in the public consultation process in the coming council chapter. So in the spirit of transparency, what organisations that exist out of the council organisation, what organisations have formally submitted to this existing draft?
Thank you, Cassandra. That's the end of your question. Okay. For the first part of your question on why going back out, and I was going to say that in my part of my speech in relation to the policy, I don't think it's good enough. I don't think it's representing what the community are asking for. I think there's been too much time spent on it for a policy where we have a policy that we've never had any problems with before, the 2019 policy. I feel we need to review other council policies who are a lot less arduous than what ours is, and that's my belief is why I've raised this as an alternate motion, that it needs to cease and basically be scrapped and start from scratch. I think we need to have a working group that isn't council based and not led by certain officers at council. That is the reason why. The second question, I can't remember, maybe I can't answer it.
My second question was about transparency, considering there may be a period of public consultation coming up in the next year or two. Could we know now which organisations outside council have formally submitted to this existing draft?
I can't tell you offhand, Ben, unless you know formal organisations that have...
We might have to take that on notice, just double check whether we're able to disclose that before we rush blindly into that.
Yep.
So if it doesn't break any laws and legislation, could you make that information available on the council website? Attached to any explanation about what's happened to this?
What's on this? We'll have a look at that on the privacy policy situation, make sure we can. If we can't, we'll also recommend that. Your question came up about that, and we can't disclose it because of policy reasons, or privacy reasons.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cassandra.
If I may, kind of in relation to the question just asked, I guess points towards the fact that the submissions haven't been, a summary of the submissions has not been provided, as it sometimes has been in relation to other matters. Yes, sorry, it's in confidential, sorry. It hasn't been provided in the public agenda, as has sometimes happened in other instances in the past. And I'm talking about a summary, obviously, because just considerations around privacy that was highlighted in relation to the organisation's submissions. But I guess I'm putting it forth, and that I imagine that would be beneficial and helpful for people who, such as Cassandra, who are asking those sorts of questions. And I guess just expressing my frustration, I guess, with the lack of consistency in the way that sometimes these processes are handled from where I sit. And I guess extend sympathy to community members who also have to negotiate different ways of taking in information through council processes, which can definitely be challenging because content matter is very, very deep, extensive, controversial sometimes, and when those systems are not necessarily very consistent and have familiarity, I guess, in the processes, just an acknowledgement that perhaps we could do better in that space.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any other questions from the gallery?
I was going to say to the end that Jack's raised it.
Sorry, could you
My name's Tony Reeser.
Thanks, Tony.
I have given feedback into this plan, so I'm involved. It has come to my attention that my first email submission to the first draft of inclusion plan action points, which was displayed on the Wangaratta Connect, was not taken for consideration. I know that to be true. And now we have the scenario that a publicly consulted document is being voted upon without any public access to a feedback summary. I understand confidentiality of the summary has been good. This is a document that has made clear space for outside lobby groups and activists to determine local policies. Is this level of underhandedness and lack of transparency what community members can expect when deciding upon LGBTQI+ and other contentious issues?
Thank you, Tony. Good question. And again, another reason why I brought through this recommendations to council policy and basically start from scratch at some other stage. The previous policy is still a good policy and a current one. It is part of the Act that we do have to upgrade this policy because it's come to the end of its time, and it will be done at some stage, but it needs to be done better. Thank you.
So maybe I could just redirect to the question, perhaps an answer as to why we have taken this path. I must convey that as well, I guess. It might be beneficial.
I've said it before.
To the public meeting. An answer as to why the process was perhaps different, obviously, due to considerations.
Through the mayor, do you mean in relation to a summary of the submissions?
Yes, yeah.
So I know there were a number of submitters who specifically requested that their submissions and the content of those were kept confidential. Some of the submissions expressed views that are a bit sensitive, I guess, so people were genuinely concerned about their submissions being treated confidentially. So that is why we've provided them all to you confidentially, so that they all are treated consistently. You can judge for yourself whether that's the right treatment or not, and we will look into whether we can disclose any of those in a different way when it comes time for the new council to consider it in whatever shape they decide to do. But that's why we've taken that position on this occasion.
Have you got a response, Jack?
Oh yeah, I just think a response is
okay. Thank you. Thank you, Tony. You can ask another question.
But surely there must be, like we're talking a summary, surely there must be a way to present to the community feedback on where allegiances lie and thought lies. This is an issue that I get is sensitive. I've been very reluctant to put my name to it. I'm thankful I can't be put out of a job for doing it, because we know people have been. But there must be, just in a summary, and I know in my submission I said just leave my name off it if you were to use it. So I've certainly given permission to use my feedback. I'm sure others must have. And there must be a mechanism that allows to let community members know where the wind is blowing on this.
Yeah, again, through the mayor, if I could not, the point you make is a good one, and I've heard it, and what I was trying to articulate was when it comes time for the new council to consider this in whatever shape and fashion they do, we'll consider how we can provide that sort of a anonymous and confidential summary at that point. The motion that we have on the table now is quite specific that we're ceasing all work. I would take that to include sending someone off to develop a summary of submissions would be work in my view, so we wouldn't be doing that unless council wants to amend that, but we'll certainly look at how that can be provided when it comes time for the new council to have a look at it.
Yep. And this process may take a complete different form and shape, and it's the new council to decide. I would like to decide on it, but haven't got the time. This has been a process here now, and we've got to make a decision on something. We've only got tonight really is which to make a decision. I don't want to give an uninformed and vote on something that I'm not happy with, so I'd rather council the permission. But some of my councillors will talk to my recommendation upon there being no further questions from me. So yes, Anne, please up again, Anne. Like Tony, I know who you are. Just please say your name.
So Anne Dunstan, and future candidate for the council. My question tonight is literally addressing how you've amended the motion. Is that this is a large document that will bind the future council to some very stringent requirements, and I am grateful that as a potential candidate to step onto the council, that you have deferred this decision for the incoming council to make. So thank you for considering that motion. The other thing is, for me, reading through this document, and I have been following this from the start of the process, is that there are so many inconsistencies in how they're dealing with data. For instance, you refer to data from 2020, but then you move to, within the same page, you reference a very specific number of people within the community. So there needs to be consistency in how we're taking this on. But I know it's not a question and it's a statement, but thank you for taking that into consideration for future council.
Thanks, Anne. Again, if there's no further questions from the gallery, we'll move on. Councillor Benton, as the seconder, did you have anything to say in relation to the recommendation?
I think I'm supporting the motion only because of what has been said and endorsed, and I think there is too much polarisation has been happening, specifically in the last 3 or 4 weeks, months that I've known about, to actually encompass the whole community. And looking at the document, and once again we're pushed up against time to be able to really work this document properly through. And I think the best decision is to do what we've got on the table at the moment. Because we have a document that is workable and it can be achieved. And yes, we've got to do this because of the Act, which frustrates me more than the actual document part, having to do these sorts of things. I think there's a lot of other policies and what we're doing with this going forward. I don't really think it is an issue for local government to be played into at all. So I'm just supporting the motion as it is.
Thank you. And sorry, the alternate motion as it is. Thank you. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, because I'm also supporting your motion. This plan, from my perspective, is a plan that I can't endorse, in as much as it's there are too many inconsistencies. I don't think it's been worked through well enough. And we talk about the requirement of the Act. However, the Act says that we must have an inclusion plan, but it doesn't say what exactly it should look like. But what it is, any plan or any policy, it has to reflect what our community would like to see in the policy. I think, what we've been presented, I don't think, because it bears no resemblance to the previous policy, I think it hasn't looked at the community in a broad and holistic way. I think the policy tends to divide people into categories, and I think, we've missed the point if that's the way we're going to approach this. Councillors are being asked, or have been asked, to endorse a document that I think amplifies social issues which are not at the heart of being truly inclusive, and perhaps reflects the bias and interests of council officers who insist this is all about legislative change. And as I said, there is legislative change, and inclusion is the word of the month, but let's not forget about what council should be doing, what inclusion actually really means, and how it should work for the whole community. And I think we only have to look at our community plan to see its very broad focus, and that's what we should be doing. And I would hate to see this policy go out with so much work that needs to be done on it. But I also reluctantly think I don't really want to hand pass it on to the next council, but I think the completeness of it requires further scrutiny and further discussion and further work. I think we can't forget that one of the greatest challenges that we face as a council is to focus on what our core business is. And I think I've said this before, and I'll possibly say it again. Spend money on the things that we can do. There are things like roads, footpaths, recreational facilities, libraries, aged care support, just to name a few of the responsibilities of council. And this is what inclusion means to me. And it's about being practical and holistic and to focus on our community. So I think this policy certainly needs to be reworked with a clear eye on the previous document, but certainly with an ear to the voices of the community, because this is what this document's all about. It is a document that has to reflect and be supported by our community.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. That's all. Thank you. Councillor Russell and then Councillor Fitzpatrick. Not sure if Councillor Daly.
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Russell.
I listened to submitters and I listened very carefully to submissions, and that this policy would most likely affect, and many were not comfortable with this document. So that's the reason why I'm supporting the alternate motion. Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I will be supporting the alternate motion for a few reasons, but first I do want to acknowledge the work that has gone into the plan and all of the submitters for feedback, because this topic is sensitive for many, and if you don't speak up, then we can't do anything about it. So I really do appreciate everyone putting in their feedback, and to the council officers for putting this together. Their work is acknowledged. The reason why I'll be supporting the alternate motion tonight is time. I feel communication and proper planning around the table, regardless, is definitely that there needs more time. There needs to be another plan on this, and so that's why I think that it should go to another council to really set the scene now on how we want to move forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Probably for the first time in 8 years, this has been probably the most opposing conversation we've had, and perhaps that's why it's elongated in time and such. And as many compliments as I had about the document in its various forms, I've also had a number of people that are less confident in the conversation and its direction. So I think it's imperative that we give it another chance to be more thoroughly digested by a wider community conversation, with so many of those impacting people in different ways, including those of us that have had lived experience.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Airy, did you want to talk on the recommendation? Or?
Yes, I would like to, Mary. Fellow councillors. Forgive me if I've run over time pulling up on it. I may ask for an extension, but yeah. So I hear a lot of kind of general objections to the strategy that's the subject of 14.2. From a number of my fellow councillors, I don't hear any clear indications of what elements would be changed to improve the plan. I guess I'm left to understand that it's completely unimprovable and unworkable by people that have expressed that as general objection. I personally don't believe that kicking this can down the road without a robust kind of justification and clear reasoning is warranted. I don't think that's the right way to approach this. So I'm not going to support the alternate, to support the motion that's on the table. I just want to make a couple of points, I guess. So one is that in the public submissions, the confidential, which was confidential, no one in the public could see that. Some of my fellow councillors have kind of made reference to input that we've received and kind of ambiguously referred to some amount of input. And it has come in different channels. But of the formal submissions that were made, I counted around 25, maybe close to 30 that were broadly in favour, and then around 10 that were generally against or opposed, or largely opposed to various aspects. It varied because it gave specific feedback in specific areas. It wasn't blanket opposal or necessarily blanket in favour of. So I just want to make that clear because it's information that the public did not have. But broadly, I think a lot of content of the plan is would be acceptable for this council to carry forward. I'll talk to a couple of key points that I think are maybe most controversial and that I feel maybe were resolved in some of the modifications. So toilets, for example, I think were mostly misunderstood in the language that was used, and I think an increase in the number of unisex stalls or toilets is a fairly common sense approach. And I think a lot of the feedback kind of got confused about what the change might be with respect to toilets. I think people were jumping the gun and making assumptions that women only or female only spaces were going to be completely removed, and it was all going to be toilets, and there were going to be no women's only spaces. So I think that was a misunderstanding. I think there's clarity around that issue, that kind of controversial issue, of which a lot of the feedback and submissions spoke of. So I think that's resolved, that's a good thing. Flags, I think that, again, many in the community and many of the submissions sort of jumped the gun on the notion around flags and a flag policy, and assumed that, by virtue of adopting or creating a flag policy, council is necessarily going to become a fly all flags every other day of the week sort of council, which is complete assumption, nonsense, not true. It's jumping the gun, as I said. I certainly believe that the inclusion of a flag policy would provide clarity to this council. One way or the other, that would be a process. For what it's worth, I wouldn't preempt any future decision, but I certainly feel it would be good for council to have a policy that was clear that we are not going to be flying numerous flags every other day of the week.
How are you going time-wise, Jack?
Yeah, I'm going all right. Do I need to request an extension formally?
No, but
okay.
Wrap it up.
All right, I'll try and get there. I just do think this is a controversial topic, and we're not in any great rush to get home.
Yeah, I am
necessarily. Dave's not on the way yet. Just the last controversial issue was that issue around gender and the whole gender identity thing, which really got a lot of work up. Look, I guess in the interest of kind of having this as a public discussion, which I think it needs to be, like it's a challenging subject matter, and that's why I'm kind of going at length on this, and appreciate all the feedback that has come in and community input, but yeah, it was a controversial matter, but I think just one key kind of element I want to put out there for people, and it came from one of the submitters actually around the issue of gender, was that submitter saying, why aren't men asked to make room in their spaces for the things that aren't normal kind of masculine or man type things? And the example was men wearing dresses in a male change room and in male spaces. And while I want to be crystal clear, I don't want to simplify the intimately personal element of a person's relationship with their gender. I just thought that comment really rang a lot of truth for me. I personally feel that so many of our issues...
Jack, I'll give you one more minute to finish up.
Yes,
okay. I'll direct you to one more minute and then you can finish.
Yeah, so I think a lot of issues relate to men masculinity and, men's violence against women, men's violence against other men, and I think if we focus, I guess, generally less focus on more categories to break us up into and more focus on the existing categories we have and opening them up so they're not so constrained, I think we would all benefit. So just a final point, which is, I think, substantial. But the question of disability and the disability action plan being rolled into one broad inclusive document is actually something I'm not convinced on. It was something that was raised by a lot of submissions that, because council, there's another act, the Disability Act, forget the year, but council's required to have a disability action plan. It's quite a little bit specific around the nature of that plan. It's meant to be action oriented. It's meant to have elements like means of evaluating policies and programs laid out in that plan, allocation of responsibility of persons or teams that should deliver the items in that plan, these concepts of accountability, transparency. So I didn't feel that coming through in this plan.
Thanks, Jack. Thank you. So as the mover of the recommendation, I have the final word, and I'd like to state that, again, Jack, you spoke for, this is only a statement, not a question. You spoke for 5 minutes on inclusivity plan in relation to gender neutral toilets, LGBTQI community, and about 1 minute on what this policy is supposed to cover, which is the most vulnerable people in our community. Our elderly.
1 minute, I know you cut me off.
Yeah, I cut you off because you spoke for, you obviously thought something was more important. Again, I'm not asking for a response, I'm making a statement. Are the most vulnerable people. I also like to move the 79 councils in Victoria legislated to do an inclusivity policy, and we have 79 councils wasting all of our taxpayers' money doing 79 inclusivity policies around Victoria alone. Surely God, the government could do something better with their money and direct money elsewhere and do one policy out of the government somehow that includes all of us. At that, I'll put the recommendation to the vote of the alternate motion which I raised and was seconded by Councillor Benson. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you. Sorry.
All those against? Maybe just ask for that.
Sorry. All those against? You could have asked for a division if you wanted to. No. All those against?
It would be now. Support those anyway.
We'll move. We'll move on to 14.3. Thank you, Ben Thomas again. 14.3, which is the C43853 truck plant equipment hire.
Mayor Rees. So this item relates to a panel of suppliers, and this panel of suppliers is for our truck plant equipment, for our field services, horticulture and waste management team to use. So we advertise for this panel for suppliers to come on, and through this process we get all their critical details, all their insurance, which enables us, once this panel is awarded, to easily award work across the panel. So it gives council officers flexibility to choose and bring on suppliers as we need them, and satisfies our procurement requirements under the Local Government Act. So we've advertised this panel. You can see there are 6 providers in our region, geographically spread across the region as well, which helps us out in terms of our locality and getting the best bang for buck in terms of value for money with transport. So yeah, today we are proposing the council awards the contract to Track Hire Operations, Comp Hire, Hume Hire, North East Civil Construction, Porter Plant and Cook's Earth and Earthen Laser Landforming Pty Ltd for a 5-year period on a 2-2-1 basis, and get the contract signed by the CEO under delegation.
Thank you, Ben. Are there any questions from the gallery on this item? No? Can I have a mover for this item, please? Councillor Bustle, Councillor Benson to second. Councillor Bustle, did you need to talk on it?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Benson. Would any other councillor like to talk on the recommendation? Put the recommendation to vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Acting Director 14.4, C34852, Traffic Control Management Services, please.
Thanks very much. So a very similar arrangement, a 5-year panel, and so this is for our traffic management services, covering a wide range of services across council, so road maintenance, resheeting, as well as events team, and also during the clean-up of weather events. And under this contract we had 2 apply, Game Traffic and Contracting and Saddleman Traffic Pty Ltd, and similarly it's to be authorised by the CEO under delegation.
Again, if there's no questions from the gallery, I'll look for a mover, please. Councillor Benton, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Councillor Benton, no thoughts?
Similar to the previous motion.
Same, Councillor Fitzpatrick?
Yep.
No other council like to talk on it? Put the recommendation to vote. All those in favour? and the recommendation is carried. I'll go to item 14.5 then, which is contract 651977 for the reconstruction of Salisbury Street, please.
Thank you. So, infrastructure team, we have a program of works to reconstruct our urban streets, our residential and commercial areas, and we sort that based on priority basis of the condition of the road. And this contract is for the reconstruction of Salisbury Street in Wangaratta. So this is between Burke Street and Crib Road, and it's for reconstruction of the pavement, drainage, as well as driveway crossovers and footpaths. So it's a full reconstruction which should last a long time. The contract is awarded. We've gone through an evaluation process. So we've advertised for contracts, and from that evaluation process, we're proposing to award to Wangaratta Excavation and Dry Hire.
Thank you. And we'll disclose the contract price. The recommendation is fulfilled. Any questions again from the gallery on this item? They know. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Bustle and Councillor Grant. Councillor Bustle, do you have anything to add?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Grant?
No, just good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Councillor, any other councillors? No. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you, Acting Director. That's the end of your... Oh, sorry, the price. I always miss the price.
So the price we're recommended for a lump sum of $502,700.88, and that's GST exclusive, and it includes contingency and provision items.
So they put less contingency in there. Great. We'll move on to item 15 now, which is through Director Stephen Swart, Sustainability and Culture. Stephen, 15.1 is our Economic Development and Tourism Strategy.
Thank you. A new economic development and tourism strategy has been developed to help guide in the continued sustainable economic development of the rural city of Wangaratta. The final strategy is being presented to Council for adoption today and is a result of extensive community consultation, including seeking feedback to help develop the draft and then also publicly exhibiting the draft for community feedback. The community feedback received has resulted in some changes to the strategy, and those changes are summarised in the report. Officers recommend that Council consider the submissions received during the community engagement and exhibition period of the strategy, endorses the changes to the draft strategy, and adopts the strategy.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions from the gallery on this? Yes, please.
My name is Jennifer Garrett. I actually made a submission to the Connect Wangaratta. So my first question is regarding Connect Wangaratta. Is in theory a conversation put forward as it's a conversation, someone can put in an opinion and there can be some information back and forwards, you would think, with a conversation. I put a submission in and I have heard nothing about it until attachment 2 came out, and it's interesting with the previous comments tonight because attachment 2 summarises people's submissions and has responses to those submissions. It would be really nice if all the people that put submissions in actually received that attachment 2 back and said, these are the submissions, just a generalisation, and these are the thoughts that go with that. And a second part to that would be to let people know that it's coming before council on a certain date. That's just a little bit of community, letting people know what's going on. If they're taking the effort to put the information in, to tell them that they're getting something back.
And the submissions again don't need to be named?
No, well, they weren't named in attachment 2 either. No, they weren't named. They were very general, and the responses to that. So that was the first part.
Thank you.
Is that something that can be considered?
Certainly.
The second part was in regards to my particular submission, which was included in there. I wasn't named, it was just general. But there was mention about a visitor information centre and that it was now part of the Creative Precinct Plan. That there is one to be in the Creative Precinct Plan, and that's many years, many millions of dollars away. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, if it ever does happen. So my question is, in the interim, can we possibly consider an information kiosk, possibly on the corner of Apex Park where people can see it and RVs can actually park, And the precedent to that is the coffee kiosk at Cafe Preview, so a very similar kiosk to that. So if something can go on Apex Park, kids can play, RVs can park, and we can actually provide information to tourists which currently don't know where to find that information, and support our regional and rural areas and tell them what's around and get people, as part of the strategy, to stay overnight or longer. So that's the second part. Can we possibly consider an information kiosk in the interim?
We actually do have an information kiosk in 2 locations, one already in our performing arts area there. There is an information kiosk which we have manned by a person to talk to people that come in. We also have one at Glenrowan up in our visitor information centre with areas for caravans to park up there as well and where to go, apart from just coming into Wangaratta.
I'm talking about one that people can actually find, so that if they're driving through town and those information signs that are in town that say there's information in 1 kilometre and there is no information in 1 kilometre because they haven't been taken down since the Information Bureau moved out of Murphy Street. So they're still there. It says 1 kilometre to information and there's nothing there.
And we'll have a look at that for sure.
And driving through town, people don't know to go to the Performing Arts Centre underneath the stairs to find information. So in a very visible place, as I say, just like the kiosk where the coffee kiosk was for Cafe Preview, very similar, a relocatable, can just sit there and give people information, and there's plenty of parking and it would be a great asset. And one more thing, I know there's only 2 questions, but one more thing. I'm from Morali, and I would love to know where the RV dump point is in Morali that's mentioned in the report. When there was some questions around RV dump points, and it said there is currently one in Millawa, in Oxley, and there's one in Morali, and no one in Morali knows where it is, so if we could find that out, that'd be great.
There's not one of the rec reserve? It's in Morning at Oxford. And Wangaratta.
And I believe the one in Millawa.
Any idea?
Near Brown Brothers.
Oh, Brown Brothers, yes, they do have it in their car park there. Yeah. Thank you, and we'll take that under consideration. Thanks for your comments. Are there any other questions from the gallery? No? I'll look forward to someone. You can move that recommendation. Thank you, Councillor. Seconder, please. Councillor Grant. Councillor Russell, did you want to talk on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tourism is something that is developed. It's in our municipality. It's bigger now than it used to be. It's very, very important. And I think that this will help guide our staff through the next period. And there's been a lot of work. I've done a bit of work with the staff, so I'm very happy to move this, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grant, did you want to talk?
Oh, well, only to say that, while there's been a lot of work done in this space, with regard to economic development and tourism, it's a movable feast. It's not something that we can simply sit back and sit on our laurels and say, well, we've done the strategy, now we'll reap the benefit. It means continuing hard work and also commitment to ensuring that Wangaratta is considered not only as a destination but as a hub of the region. So also I'd like to just perhaps comment about the commitment of the staff in putting together this policy too.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors like to talk on the recommendation? Councillor Herring?
Sorry, mate. So, ultimately, I feel from reading this document and a number of times and going back over it, I kind of land to the conclusion that it feels a bit like an all things to all people sort of document. And I know that's kind of a naff thing to say, but I find it very hard to determine how it provides robust, clear clarity in strategic direction. It's in no way intended as an affront to the staff who've laboured over the document and put it together and doubtless put in a lot of work. I would say it probably more reflects on this group, myself included, these councillors in challenge ourselves, our community, to strive towards clarity in strategic direction. I feel like we're left with often middling documents. I would argue this is one such example. They kind of point us everywhere and nowhere at once, full of unresolved competing objectives and conflicts. Just for example, how do you propose to increase consumption, gross regional product, tourism without compromising the environment upon which we all depend? How do you balance livability with visitability? How do you balance more population with pressure on services? I just don't think clarity is provided that when push comes to shove, which takes precedence? What are the thresholds we kind of wait for before services drop off, that we actually decide, well, you know, there's an issue with the growth of population in this area? I don't think those sorts of concepts are really thoroughly considered. So, yeah, I guess I've just not given confidence about the strategic direction, and am I offering a suggested solution? I don't have a need to find a solution to put on the table directly in response to this document. It's a little bit, there's too much going on, I guess, apart from general transparency process principles around, we've heard about that community engagement, and consistency or lack of consistency in some of those processes. A robust investment framework that has transparency around it, things which I have been, I guess, advocating for in my role as councillor over the years, and improvements in those spaces. So apart from that, I can't offer any solutions, but I just can't support this document as it exists on the table at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Herrick. Are there any other councillors like to talk?
Perhaps, just say a couple of things in response to that. I mean, hearing what you say, but I think it's important to be ambitious in what we would like to see in that space. But at the end of the day, the fact that there'll be a whole lot of factors that will influence what happens and what develops in the process. And a lot of it is about dollars, and if we don't have the dollars, a lot of those things are just not possible. But I think it's important that we've got to move forward and be ambitious and hope for the best for tourism and economic development in our community. And I think and as we come up against each issue, then we will consider whether that's good or that's not, and whether we can move forward. Yep.
And if I may, just briefly in response.
Yep, I'll let you
And I would say, as we come up against each issue, then we can grapple with it, having clarity around which things we will take priority and the processes that will occur at that time. Because the issue is, with these strategic directionless middling type documents, is the decisions will get pushed back out of this sort of public forum, public process, and a lot will happen, and we'll all of us end up 4 or 5 years down the track and go, oh, gee, I'm not sure I've got a clear accountability link of traceability as to precisely how we got to be where we are.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Jake. I'll put if there's nothing further, sorry, Councillor Bustle, as the mover of the motion, did you want to finish?
It's been a nice sentence to me, thank you.
Thank you. Put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. All those against? Thank you, Councillor Herrick. We'll now move on to 15.2, which is the low density and rural residential strategy. Sorry, yes, and we'll declare the conflicts. CEO McGrath again.
Yes, I'm declaring a little conflict of interest because I own land in the strategy study area.
Councillor Fitzpatrick.
I'm declaring a material conflict of interest as family owned land in the study area.
And Councillor Grant.
I also declaring an interest because of our land.
Lovely, thank you. You're all happy to stand out of the room. Thank you. Okay, Director Swart, please, your summary.
Thank you. In 2021, a low density and rural residential strategy was prepared and presented to Council for adoption. The strategy considered future directions for low density and rural living zones across the entire municipality. Council adopted the rural components of the strategy only at that time and resolved that officers should undertake further investigations for the Wangaratta component covered by that strategy. Those investigations were subsequently completed, resulting in a draft additional investigations report, and that report was publicly exhibited. Submissions were received as a result of that, and they have now been considered, and the additional investigations report has been amended. This item presents the final additional investigations report and its recommendations to Council for adoption and implementation.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions from the gallery here before I read a couple of public questions on this issue? No. Firstly, Stephen, just a question. Greg Wheeler has asked at the questions of the council meeting 6 p.m. on the 16th, which was assigned to you. Question 1 is, there are numerous references to precinct structure plans. Can you please provide a brief explanation of what these entail?
So the additional investigations report identified 2 areas within Wangaratta that should be considered for future rezoning, subject to precinct structure plans being completed first. Structure planning will deliver the next level of detail beyond the high-level analysis already completed. It will include more detailed consideration of constraints and opportunities as they apply to those specific areas, and they will include things like environmental considerations, such as vegetation and wetland areas, bushfire design requirements, protection of infrastructure like a gas pipeline, freeway, aerodrome, stormwater drainage management, design, lot layout and sizes, and road access.
Thank you. Director, I also had a couple of questions that were put in after the deadline of submitted questions. I'm going to read them. Whether you can answer them or we take them on notice, I'll leave that to your discretion. This question is from a Michael Porter, and there are 2 questions, and he apologises for the late notice. However, since the Communication from Wayne Council and LDR strategy was an item in this month's meeting, there was little opportunity for him to review the bizarre changes in the report. That's his terminology. Can the councillors explain, councillors explain why after 4 years, since early 2020, working on the LDRs, which is the Low Density Rural Residential Strategy, there is still currently no proposal for rezoning/planning scheme amendments, any land to LDRZ within Wangaratta. In particular, the same area, Wangaratta W1C South, Wangaratta, and Wangaratta WC to the north, in October 2023, versions of this report said, prepare a planning scheme amendment following completion of the precinct development plan to commence a rezoning process to LDRZ, which is low density residential zone. This should be recommended, and what councillors should adopt now, based on the rising demand for LDRZ and the lack of supply, rather than to seek only a precinct development plan, which plan that was recommended years ago. Stephen, do you have a response, or would you like to take that on notice and answer directly to the applicant?
I can respond to that one. So with the document that's in front of council this evening, the recommendation for that area that's described there is for precinct structure planning to be completed first, which aligns with what Michael said there.
Yes.
One of the things that's changed is that we don't recommend to go for the low density and for the low density residential zone. But we are saying that the precinct structure planning process should determine the future zoning of the land. Just because of the size of that land and some of the constraints that apply to that land, that's probably a better process than just saying it's going to go to the low density residential zone. That precinct structure planning process will consider, as I said before, a long list of different constraints and opportunities, but it will also consider things like lot layout and lot sizes. Now, lot layout and lot sizes, especially lot sizes, are mostly determined by zoning, and that's why that's the right time to then determine what the zoning is. So the recommendation has changed slightly, but we are still recommending those areas for future structure plans.
Thank you. Question 2 is in regards to the W/1D alternative area. In the October 2023 version of this report, recommended not to change the land to the south of Shanley Street from RLZ2 to RLZ1. This is now proposed to be included based on further research, which seems questionable based on the landholders in that area. Can councillors explain why the sole focus of the LDRR strategy is now prepare a planning scheme amendment to change the land from RLZ2 to RLZ1 and not support any planning scheme amendment for LDRZ land?
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure whether the sole focus of the report is just focused on that Shanley Street area. That is a part of it. And Michael's quite right in saying that the report recommends that that area be changed from the rural living zone in one schedule, so I think it's in schedule 2 at the moment, to change that to the rural living zone, but schedule 2. What that effectively means is that it will remain in the same zone, but if that change goes through, people in that area would be able to subdivide down to smaller lot sizes than they can at the moment.
And with the schedule change, that means it's not a planning scheme amendment as such?
It's still a planning scheme amendment. We still go through exactly the same process. Every time we want to change the planning scheme, it's exactly the same process.
But a schedule change won't apply for the windfall gains tax?
Yes. So the other areas that Mike will talk about, they are very different from these areas because the proposal there would be to go from the current farming zone into another zone. So that's a complete zone change. Plus, there's all of those constraints that I spoke about, and the need for precinct structure plans arise out of those. The document says that we should still pursue that, so it's not saying we shouldn't be doing that. It basically says that we need to do a little bit more work on those areas, and then in the shorter term we can make this change of schedule for the Shanley Street area. One of the other reasons why we went to propose the land south of Shanley Street is if you consider the fact that council will have to complete the precinct structure plan process for the other areas, there will be time taken up to do that, and in the shorter term we wanted to put some land supply into the market. So it's a stepping stone to I guess the outcome further down the track.
So just in short too, adopting structure plans or doing this and having structure plans will help us determine what the best zoning for us to rezone this land should be.
Yes.
So working out what size lots should be better, could get in here, whether they're acres, 2 acres, 3 acre lots, and that will help with the next move is to get a planning scheme amendment.
Yes.
Great. Obviously there's no other questions that I had for that. No question from the gallery. I'll look for a mover for the recommendation. Councillor Bussell, Councillor Benton seconded. Councillor Bussell, anything to say on this? Councillor Benton.
No, I didn't say it's Tom. We've been chewing over this bone for some time, and it's good to get going on. And I'd like to make sure that the emphasis is put on what Director Sport said about the additional land is not to be forgotten about moving forward. Development is around this, and housing, low density, even low density, is going to become in short supply very quickly again.
Thank you, Councillor. There's nothing further, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Herrick? Yeah, Councillor Herrick, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I will just ask one question I'll direct to the floor. In that precinct planning process, is there opportunity for interrogation, or is the annual exceedance potential, like flooding, and the probabilities around flooding. Is that further examined and interrogated? I guess with a view to ensuring that the most significant, the largest buffers against those events are maintained.
Yeah, happy to answer?
Yep, if you have the answer.
Yes, so that's basically illustrates the point of doing increasing structural plans. It means that we are able to interrogate some of the constraints a little bit further, especially constraints like that where there is a measure of uncertainty about where we might end up with climate change impacts. So yes is the answer. It will give us the opportunity to further explore those things. I should just caution that at the time when we do that, we will tend to use the system that is in place at that point in time. So we depend on the Catchment Management Authority to help us with floodplain management and determine where flood overlays are supposed to be applied. And that's probably what we will do, or not probably, that is what we will be doing at that point in time, yes.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yeah, just to add context to that discussion, so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the flood overlays currently in place, the typical one is at 1% annual exceedance probability. I do believe there's be it formal or informal, perhaps you can clarify, 0.5% recommended going forwards. So that's like 1 in 200 year is sometimes the kind of way of communicating that. 1 in 200 year of a certain event. Perhaps I could get a response to that.
Do you have a response to that, or have you taken a notice?
At the moment, in the planning system, we still use the 1%, but there has been talk about, bringing in the 0.5%. I haven't seen that done formally yet, but things change within the planning system over time as well.
That will come in through the Victorian government to use that, not by us?
I'm not certain how that would happen.
Sorry, one more question if I may.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Is council able to disregard those, the 1% that's currently in the planning scheme, and go and disregard it and building places exposed to that? And equally, on the flip side of that, is council able to disregard it and say, no, we're going to opt for a 0.5% ahead of it being formally committed to the planning scheme, or a 0.01% or whatever it might be?
Can you answer that?
Yes, so I guess the simple answer is that council can't disregard the 1% because that's what current flood overlays are based on, and they are embedded into our planning scheme. The planning scheme is subordinate legislation, so it can't be ignored. I think at the same time, when you look at precinct structure planning, there is opportunity to consider things beyond what's in the planning scheme. So you might make decisions about the protection of vegetation, just to use a different example, that goes beyond what the planning scheme says. So that's a decision to be made within that structure planning process.
One more?
If I may, no question, but I guess just to provide context and clarity, elucidate why I went through that painful kind of process, I guess, is to say that council can opt to be more risk averse in situations of planning and exposure of our community, future communities in this instance, to natural disaster. I think these annual exceedance probabilities have kind of been designed historically around this concept that is pretty fixed, and you kind of see these floods 1 in 100 years, and it's not really changing goalposts. Climate change, of course, we're going into a future where completely compressing, changing on the goalposts. So I think council will be extremely prudent to be very risk averse and take it upon itself at those later stages of this process to adopt greater buffers, which will guarantee a longer time frame of reducing communities' exposure to natural disasters like floods and changing climates.
Thank you. Nothing further. I'll just add that this development is being worked on. We have many parcels of land with general residential, which is a high density residential in Wangaratta, and we shall work very forward on alternate sizes of land, whether acres, 2 acres, 5 acres, 10 acres, in close proximity, which is why people move to the country, to get stuff where they don't have to travel half an hour away to get those size parcels of land. We've struggled on it. There is no new subdivisions at the moment that's offering anything different to general residential land at the present time. They're all sold, they're all done. So we can see the vast call out for that. My urgence on council is to make sure that we're budgeted so that we can do these structure plans for the future. And I urge my fellow councillors out there that may be to keep council budget-wise, is to make sure that we can produce and finish these structure plans within the current terms of our long-term financial plan, make sure the money is available to do it. Otherwise, we'll be left with no land bar general residential land if we can't afford to do that to boost our economy and to boost our people wanting different parcels of land. So thank you. Councillor Bussell, you are the mover of the recommendation. Have you finished?
Thank
I'll
you.
put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you. Could you please get in? Thank you, everybody. We're drawing to a close of the meeting shortly, but we have no special committee reports, advisory committee reports, no minutes from advisory council meetings, and no notice of motions coming forward. There is no urgent business, but we do have item 21. Before we go out for confidential business, this is general public question time now. And we would like you, if you've got a general question that we may be able to answer it, we may not be able to answer it tonight, and we will endeavour through one of our directors or councillors to get back to you if we can't answer it here on the spot. So if you have a question, please stand up, state your name again so that we can hear, and then we can move on. I will say this, that all councillors and corporate management team will be around out here to have a cup of tea afterwards, so if you have any questions you feel you'd like to raise then, please, you may do so then too. So are there any questions from the gallery? Please, Alison.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, Deputy Mayor and councillors. My name is Alison Wilson and I'm from Wangaratta. My question is in regards to the Rural City of Wangaratta Council meeting held on the 27th of August 2024 in Oxley. Agenda item 14.5, Community Grant Recommendations 24 to 25, was deferred by Councillor Grant with the decision made at tonight's council meeting. My question is, can councillors and or executive staff please provide a reason or explanation as to why this decision was referred? Thank you.
Yes, certainly I can give the answer. There were a number of instances in the recommendation coming forward where staff hadn't reviewed the policy, and there was some money to be given out to organisations that did not fit the policy. And part of the policy could have been that we are not supposed to give money to the same thing twice in 2 years, or the same event, or same situation. So that is the main reason that we saw some flaws in it. We wanted to review it to make sure that we got it right. We didn't want to come back to the public and say, you haven't adhered to your policy, and that's the reason why we deferred it for further advancement of it. But great question. Thank you.
Scott McGuinness. Last year I raised a concern with regards to, I think it's called the road verge, the gravel area right next to the asphalt, with the spraying of that. Seems every year the contractor that the council engages just comes out, sprays any time of day, whenever they want, whatever conditions, and just uses straight glyphosate, maybe some additive in there, which doesn't work. Like the roadsides are full of resistant ryegrass, which, yeah, the contractors come out, spray, and then that's all that's done about it, and it's just left there to then breed more resistant ryegrass. When I made the complaint last year, I was told that the council was going to come back, or their contractors were going to come back and spray it again with another chemical to knock it out, which I don't think ever happened. I'm happy to be proven wrong, and I'd really like to be proven wrong, but I don't think I will be.
Obviously, if they did, it didn't work on.
Well, if they did it, it would have, because the chemical they would have used would have done the job, but yeah, I don't think it did. So the question is really, what's council going to do going forward? Because if they keep breeding just ryegrass, it's pretty much going to make our livelihoods out here very, very hard and going to cost us a heap of money to try and control it.
Great question. Thanks, Scott, for your question. CEO.
The answer is no, we know the answer, but we will go and talk to the field services team and find out.
Sorry, one more bit to that. If they're not going to do it properly, like a double knock option or something like that, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't do it at all.
Yeah,
because the people you speak to when they're doing it, they don't understand how it pollinates. They think, oh yeah, it's only here, this isn't going to end up in your paddock.
Yeah,
well, it is, because it's 5 metres away, it's just going to blow straight in there.
I understand the point, Scott, thanks.
I'll get your number after here to make sure that we can contact you back just to say
that
what
is
did
good.
get done. Hopefully we can prove you wrong, but we probably can't. But, thank you for the question. Are there any questions from the gallery? No? Great. Love when there's no questions, but plenty of questions outside if you want when we finish. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just before we do finish up, I'll come back. We have a private or a confidential business item that we need to go outside and discuss. It will only take a couple of minutes. No, it might be too hard to send you around because there's only a few of us can go out. It's only councils and Tom. I'll ask other management team to stay in. Tom, are you okay to step out and discuss outside? We'll just go outside. It'll probably only be a minute and we'll be in this area on our own. So, sorry, CEO McGrath has a...
Just before you do, I just declare a conflict of interest given the item deals with my annual review.
I'll let you stay here and answer any questions.
Yep. I'll get to
Fuller.
Mr. Mayor, yes, sorry. We omitted the process because earlier we talked about staying in the room, but we omitted the process of closing the meeting to address the confidential item in regards to information that's private and of a sensitive nature. So that would have been a meeting closure at 7:29 p.m. And therefore I move that motion in regards to also reopening the meeting at 7:34 for the closure of the meeting.
So you're moving that, you're moving that
I'm
recommendation?
moving that double recommendation.
Councillor Fitzpatrick? No. All those in favour? Yes, it's voted on. You should have. Ladies and gentlemen, that now draws an end to our meeting tonight. Thank you everyone for your attendance. Again, I said last month at our council meeting how many of these councils across Victoria don't allow question time. They do not mingle with the people afterwards for a cup of tea, etc. A lot of people talk about Wodonga specifically. They hardly ever get anyone that turns up to a meeting, maybe one. We also have that in Benalla. We don't allow any questions, bar a written question prior to the meeting. We appreciate you all being here, raising your concerns. We're here for you, so thank you everybody, and drive safely home tonight, please. And please stop and have a cup of tea. Declare the meeting now closed. Thank you.